No. Everyone, welcome to another episode of A Little Unbalanced. I'm Vanessa.
I'm Cassie.
And today we're going to be talking about boundaries. A good way to piss people off is by setting boundaries.
Oh, yes.
When I first started therapy, boundaries was one thing that I had to work on and that I had to start setting for myself, which I feel is very difficult thing to do, especially with family, because they're used to you being one way.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're changing and you're starting to say no, and you're starting to say, I don't like this. And then they start not liking that so much. So when did you first start setting boundaries? Like, did your therapist tell you to, or were you just like at a point where you're like, I need to start saying no? Are you doing that? Are you still working on that?
I think I'm still working on it, to be honest. I feel like we kind of talked about how you get to a certain age and what you're thinking just kind of starts spewing out of your mouth. So for me, it was more of I couldn't stop myself from expressing
Verbally diarrhea?
Yeah.
Verbal?
Yeah, and just kind of expressing the things that I used to shove down. Mm-hmm. It's like I got to a point where it was like, okay, you can't shove this down anymore. If you're feeling a certain way, you have to talk about it. Or you have to distance yourself from that situation or those people. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what I've learned is it doesn't always have to be an aggressive form of boundary setting. Sometimes it can be a very subtle way where you're just protecting your peace as opposed to creating more chaos. But I still am learning how to do that. I think I've always set boundaries with my husband. Like I feel very safe with him to set boundaries. And so if there's something that, I don't like, I'm very vocal about that. But that's a safe relationship. Yeah. That's a private relationship. I found that it was really hard for me when I was in my career, when I used to teach, to necessarily learn how to set a boundary, especially when it came to giving more of yourself. Mm-hmm. So I'm the type of person who just would give and give and give and give and burn myself out. And so that was a hard lesson because I did actually burn out, right? And then when it came to friends, it was more of just like allowing people to maybe say things or do things that I wasn't comfortable with and then not expressing that to them and allowing them the chance to change as opposed to just like shoving it down. So they got to the point where it just all bubbled up, you know what I mean? And I think that there's a better way to go through life. And I think that realization for me came with getting a little bit older.
Yeah. Yeah, as you get older, you definitely start to, I think it's finding yourself. Mm-hmm. So finding what you're okay with and what you're not okay with. I feel like with my family, it was hardest because I feel like, and I shouldn't be speaking for them, but what I felt was maybe they felt like I was pushing them away, that I wasn't, that I didn't care for them, that I didn't love them.
Yes, yeah.
But in reality, I just needed to love myself and care for myself more at that time, which I think is fine. Like you need to do that in order to really take care of yourself. You need to love yourself before you can love and care for other people. Yeah. And I feel like since I have set those boundaries and we've worked through them, I feel like we're in a healthier place now. We have more respect for each other. But just being able to say no, but it does piss a lot of people off when you stand up for yourself.
Can you give me an example? Like, don't have to use names, but just of like a situation maybe where you set a boundary for yourself that maybe you wouldn't have done in the past?
Without like calling out the other person?
Yeah.
No, can you? I'm like a little bit like, yes. How do you do this in a way?
This was somebody I moved back from BC. So without telling the location, there was a lady that I worked with who is just very, very negative. She just was bitter and angry and just probably should have changed careers a long time ago. And it was a big city, so I feel safe that this will never get back to this person, but they just were not happy with themselves and their life. And so she would just criticize every child, every teacher, everybody around her was in her like warpath. And I can remember setting a boundary with her, and it was one of the first times where I could not stop myself from setting a boundary. That's where the thoughts that I was thinking were being expressed verbally under my breath. And I thought, oh, okay, this is getting to a point where she is affecting my mood and the way that I'm showing up as a teacher.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was one situation where I can think where I had to. And that was probably more forced on me. So that's kind of what I'm talking about, where it's like, physically when somebody just, makes you recoil, where you just feel so tense around them. And it wasn't just to me, but it was also to the kids. So I think it's easier for me to set a boundary with people when it's about other children.
Yeah.
I'm very firm in those boundaries. So I think that's an easy example for me. But
yeah. I guess for me was when I first started setting my boundaries, and I did tell my family that I needed more space. That I needed to take time for myself. And I think that maybe they felt like it was that I didn't care for them. But in reality, I was in a very not good place at that time. I was having a lot of panic attacks. I was having a lot of anxiety. I was taking on other people's feelings. I was taking on how they portrayed me. I was taking on how they thought I should be getting better, what they thought I should be doing. And it wasn't just family, it was everybody. So I definitely needed to take, say, I need this time for myself. And I think it was hard for them at first, but then they, were okay with it and gave me that space and that time. And I think it was extremely beneficial for me to be able to have that, to heal how I felt I needed to heal, not how I felt other people expected me to heal. Like, no, you should be doing this. No, you should be doing that. I took the time to be like, this is how I feel better. This is when I feel better. This is what I feel like I need. So this is what I need to do. I need to stop being around a bunch of people. I need to just take time for myself. If I don't want to go uptown and go into a store and be around a bunch of people, I'm not. Because I know a lot of people had mixed feelings about that. No, you just need to push yourself. No, you just need to do it. No, you just need to, do this and this and this. And I was like, no, I need to just really give myself that grace and that space and just take that time for myself and not try to do what everyone else felt like I needed to do.
Ooh, see, like your boundaries are kind of mirroring mine, but mine were in regards to my job.
Yeah.
It's interesting because
there's still I ended up leaving my last job as a florist because I felt like my boundaries were overstepped. That my needs and how I felt weren't, it didn't feel good anymore. When you're going into work and it just doesn't feel like a good environment, just doesn't feel good. That was when I was like, okay,
this is time. Yeah,
it's time, right?
Yeah,
because you don't want to. Even when I go into jobs, and this probably I shouldn't say this to people, but when I go in and I'm talking to the girls or something, and they say, well, even in home care, I try not to get pulled into the drama of it. The new florist that I'm with, is amazing. It doesn't seem like that's really ever happens, but in home care, there was definitely talk all the time, and people saying how they feel this person needs to be, and they feel that this person needs to do this, and they feel that this person needs to do this, when it's their personal life. It's not the work, it's their personal life. And I was like, well, I don't know, I'm not in their shoes, so I don't want to say, I don't really know. So I never wanted to step into that, because I'm just at work, just let me do my fucking job.
So it's not
let me go give people medication and not want to be taking the medication myself, because it's driving me nuts being there. But so I think just boundaries all around, boundaries with your husband. But I feel like you have to be accepting of that too, because I know when my husband started setting boundaries, this is what I expect, this is what I want, when I need a minute, give me a minute, right? Like it's having those where I have to also be okay with that. I have to be okay with somebody saying no to me. I have to be okay with if I'm asking somebody, can you do this? And they say no, I have to be okay with it.
Yeah.
Because they have to be able to just say no and say no. And I've told Kanan that, like my son, you have to be able to say no and that be okay. And
without
not have
explanation.
to explaining yourself a million times. And I told my other son that too. We just went out and where there was an instance where he didn't want to do something. And I know he felt guilt and ashamed of not doing it. And I was like, and he was explaining. And I was like, I don't need it. Like, it's fine. You do you. Like, you don't have to explain anything to me. It is 100% okay.
Yeah.
Like, there's no judgment here. Like, just say no. Like, you're in your 20s. You can say no and it be fine.
I think that's a good point. And like having a daughter too, I want her to understand that if you are overextending yourself and you don't feel like being social, it's okay to just say no, thank you. Right? Like just be firm in and I feel like especially my entire life I've over explained things, and if I couldn't be somewhere, if I didn't want to do something or I didn't feel comfortable with that company, it would be, oh, I'm so sorry, and then I'd have a million reasons why I couldn't, and I've stopped doing that. So that is interesting that you brought that up, is just that ability to just stand firm in your no so that you can leave space for you to rest if you need to rest, or leave space for you to do the things that actually bring you joy. And I think about people who are, as women, we give so much to our families, but then there's also women who give so much to the community, and they give so much to their extended family. Like you talked about that relationship, and then they burn out themselves. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be career driven, because I know some stay-at-home moms who burn out as well, right? Like, so it's just that ability to say no. And it doesn't have to be all the time. Like, we want to give back and we want to do lovely things for other people, but not at the expense of ourselves. And they always talk about you can't give from a cup that's empty. You have to, have your cup filled and overflowing so that you have that space to give to others. And I've kind of struggled with that a little bit, because I know as a mom, I've gone through a lot of seasons and we've done some moves and we've had some loss where I feel like I'm not giving to others as much as I want to, but I also have to recognize that there's seasons in life, seasons where you're meant to give more, and there's seasons where it's okay to receive too. Yeah. Like when you're going through your struggles. And so I think it's just finding that balance and setting that boundary internally. Yeah. So that if something doesn't feel right, it doesn't have to feel like that guilt driven, oh, I think I should, because otherwise they're going to perceive me a certain way, or they're going to judge me a certain way, right? Like, it's just no, because I don't feel like it is enough. And I think that's kind of a beautiful point that you brought up.
I do find myself still struggling with explaining myself, like just recently, and Cass knows this, having somebody reach out to me and say they lost respect for me expressing how something made me feel. And I did find myself going into trying to explain. And I feel like they just didn't want to hear it. I feel like they didn't want to hear my part. They had how they felt, and which is fine. You can feel how you want to feel, but don't dismiss how I felt or how I feel. You have to be respectful that I'm not going to feel the same way you feel. So having somebody say, and respect is huge. So I tried to explain myself numerous times and explain why this and why that, to the point where they ended up just stopping talking. They were like, I'm done with this. See you later. And then I was like, okay. That's okay. And so I don't need this person in my life. I don't need somebody who, like, I'll do you a favor. And if you don't respect me, because if I didn't have respect for somebody, I wouldn't care to have them in my life anymore. No. Respect is huge. Yeah. So I'll do you a favor and not be in your life anymore. And I also don't need somebody that's going to be looking at my social media, listening to my podcast, which you can have your own opinion about it. But to not want to listen and have a conversation, and a real conversation about it,
conversation. Yeah.
it's fine. Like,
well, and
it's fine.
I think some people just want to be heard.
Yeah.
But they go about it in a really aggressive way.
They want to be heard, but they don't want to listen.
Yeah. And I think that that's part of setting boundaries too, is like, and especially at this age, I feel like that naturally happens because you start to really reflect on how you feel around certain people and how you feel when you leave a room. And I think that was a big boundary setting for me, is that sometimes when I'm in a room with certain people, I don't feel good when I leave. I feel like as soon as I step out that door, they are going to be shit talking me. And I think it's just that whole comfortability level where, you know, when you find people that build you up, or maybe not always build you up, but you just feel kind of at ease with them and in their presence, and you're talking about things that light you up and not about other people.
Yeah.
Right. Or just talk about your issues and your struggles, but not in a way that's all doom and gloom, in a way that's showing, okay, we're going to talk about this and we're going to grow and we're going to move forward. But we're not going to stay stuck in that victim mentality. And I think that was a big, like, aha for me when it came to boundary setting, was, you know, like, sometimes I get stuck in that victim mentality, but I want to be around people who are going to help me come out of that, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. Yeah. Because I definitely really was like that. And I did hate people saying no to me. Right. So, and I think it's still hard for a lot of people. I know my husband would be like, yeah, you definitely hate when people say no to you. Because
I'm sure when, think with me too, and my hubby.
I'm sure when he says no to me, I'm like, excuse me? And get all pouty, and I'm like, what, please? So I probably still have those moments. I definitely still have those moments. But it's just, I try to now realize and like accept how I can be, and then trying to, like, in those moments change that. So if he doesn't want to do something, it's fine. But if I don't want to do something, it should also be fine. Right?
Well, and I think just being aware of that helps, because then even if you screw up in the moment when you know what I mean, you can go back, and when you're calm, you can say, oh, I screwed up. Right. And I think that goes a long way in a relationship too. And I think that's something that I'm still learning too, is because you talked about saying no, and my husband is a very giving person. And he often says yes, or it'll be a no and then a yes. Do you know what I'm trying to think back? And so it is true that when you're learning to set boundaries, you do have to be open to other people in your life also setting boundaries with you, and kind of reflecting back to you your own crap. And I think that's part of, like, the learning and the growing that comes with setting boundaries. And I don't know, I know that everybody is on their own healing journey, right? And I think just a huge thing with setting your boundaries is having patience and, like, just genuine kindness towards yourself and towards other people. And I think that I was reflecting on this the other day when it comes to friendships. So, you know, when you get into this stage of life where you're kind of setting your boundaries more, and you're allowing yourself more space to just be and just do the things that you want to do, whether it's reading, or it's, you know, having a cup of tea, or just having a slow day. And I'm not saying, oh, I'm sorry, but I'll just say, no, I don't feel like it today, or I'm tired. And then I sometimes have to reflect on how the other person on the other end is receiving that, because you don't always know, right? Are they feeling like you're just ignoring them? Are you not giving them what they need to? And I think it's like, part of that has to be a conversation around.
Especially if they're feeling
neglected, or
so if they approach you and be like, this is how I feel, then you guys can explain what happened, I guess. But then that's hard. I don't know. It's because, like, you want to always be true to yourself, and you want to always make sure you give yourself that time. But I know if I was in a hard spot and, like, Cass phoned me and she was having a hard time, I would try to be there for you. Even though I wouldn't want to be, or couldn't fit, like, mentally I wasn't able to, I would still always 100% try to be there, right? So, and I wouldn't want to hurt your feelings by being like, no, I can't take on your shit right now. You know what I mean?
I see what you mean. So when somebody's in crisis, step up for them and just be that, you know, but also don't judge yourself if you're having a really bad day and you can't.
Yeah.
I agree with that. It is kind of a little bit of a give and take, hey?
I feel like if I was at 100 and you were at 50, that I would step in and be like, do you need me to do this for you? The other day, my husband just lost somebody, and we were sitting there, and you know how when you're sad, but when somebody's coming to you and they're hugging you and they're like, I'm so sorry, you really let it out. Like, I feel like all of a sudden it's just like everything opens up, and then you guys start getting emotional and you really feel things. Then it's like somebody's allowing you to have that space. Not everybody wants that space at that time.
That's true.
So when I was like giving my husband that, and he was just like, you could tell, he's like, you're making this worse. And I was like, okay, I'll give you your space. And I was ready to up and leave. And it wasn't to up and leave because I was annoyed. It was like, I'll give you your space. And I went to up and leave. And he was like, no, like, you don't need to leave. And I was like, okay, well, just shut up then. And he's like, okay. And that was it. There wasn't hurt feelings about it. There wasn't like anything else that went with that. I was just like, I'll shut up and I will give you your space, but I'm here. So, and I would probably have gotten pissed about that before. Like, I probably, like, years ago, probably would have been like, well, fuck you then. I'm trying to be considerate and you're not taking it, instead of being like, this isn't what he wants right now.
Yeah, that's right. That's a great example of being there for somebody, but having that patience and that openness to give them.
Yeah, being there for them with their boundaries and what they need. Not what you need, but what they need.
Yeah, so it goes both ways with that, hey? And I know we're kind of getting long, but I wanted to talk about how, like, you get into this stage of life where your friendships kind of fall away. Do you know what I mean? So I can't remember what the quote was, but there was a beautiful quote about, like, some friends are here for a season, a short time, and some are here for life. And when you get back together, you know, it's just really beautiful. And I think, like, there, in my mind, I believe there's, like, you know, the universe, God, whatever the higher power is working so that you have that support what you need, and you're giving that back and forth to each other when you need it. And then when you start discovering who you are and start setting those boundaries, the people who don't resonate with those boundaries, they're just going to fall away naturally. And I've noticed that in my life, that happens, or you move away and things just kind of shift and change, but you don't hold those, like, aggressive or hard feelings towards them. You just kind of accept that it is what it is. And so sometimes when you do learn to set boundaries, or you're learning who you are, you need that space. It's kind of like that butterfly that's cocooning, and then, you know what I mean? Not the butterfly, the, what's the word?
Caterpillar.
Thank you. The caterpillar, and then you blossom. And I think all those silly little quotes and those beautiful little images, but it's the truth, right? So allow yourself this space to learn who you are and learn what your boundaries are first, because that's probably one of the hardest things. Like, where is my hard line when it comes to relationships, when it comes to friendships and respect, when it comes to, I don't know, kids, right? And then sticking true to those, and just allowing yourself the space to figure that out. And, like, for Vanessa and I, we did counseling. That's helped us to figure out where our hard and fast lines are.
I think it was helpful for them to express that and show us how to get there. It is 100% your own work and your own doing on how you do it and how you get there and what you're comfortable doing. But they definitely open up that book for you. And
just that reflection piece with, you know, writing it out, or just being really true to who you are and what your needs are. And I hope that you allow yourself that space to figure out what your boundaries are, and then work towards, whether it's, you know, going to counseling, talking to a friend, talking to your partner about those things, and just having those open conversations, because it really can help you to grow and help you to shift into somebody who has more joy, right? Because you're focusing on the things that bring you joy, as opposed to those situations that kind of drain you and take away from that, you know, happiness. So thank you for joining us. We're grateful that you could be here, and we're sending